Hold on.
Okay, should be fine.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, you're ready.
Welcome to the Hawaii Board of Naturopathic Medicine virtual meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, we will play a short video to explain procedures for this virtual meeting and how members of the public can participate and interact with the board during the meeting.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on as well as their video cameras.
Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Okay. Internet access. To view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You will be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You may fill in this field with any entry in an email format. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about the agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable the testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you've finished speaking. Phone access. If you cannot get internet access, you may get audio-only access by calling the phone number listed at the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you will be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you will be asked to either enter your panelist number or wait to be admitted into the meeting. You will not have a panelist number, so please wait until you are admitted into the meeting. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specific date and time. This information can be found on the board's website. Thank you.
Okay. So we will now take a roll call to confirm our quorum. Members, when I call your name, please respond with present or here and indicate whether you are in the room alone or if anyone 18 years or older is present? If so, please identify them. Vice Chair, Dr. Corinne DeSoto.
Present. I am here alone.
Ms. Joy Kimura.
Present. I'm in my workspace alone.
And I, Chair Dr. Kristen Coles, am also present. I am also alone. That establishes quorum, so I will call the meeting to order at 2:13 p.m. So we will start with our agenda, and we will start with the approval, agenda item 2, which is approval of our meeting minutes. This is for the board to review approval of the meeting minutes from the April 19th, 2024 publicly noticed meeting. Is there anyone here that wishes to provide testimony?
Thank you, Chair. This is Johnny. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Thank you. Members, any of you have comments or corrections or anything to note from the meeting minutes?
I have no comments or corrections.
No comments or corrections either.
Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for April 19th, 2024?
This is Joy Kimura. I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
And
Thank you.
Corinne DeSoto, I will second.
So the meeting on iChair, I guess I approve it too. I don't think I have to say that. The meeting minutes for April 19th are approved. So we can move to the next agenda item, number 3. This is applications. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to provide testimony?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Great. So we were provided the list of approved applications to be ratified. Do we have any members who have comments or questions on the list we were provided?
No comments.
So if there's no comments or further discussion, I would motion to approve the ratification list of the approved applications. Can I get a second?
I will second. This is Corinne DeSoto.
Okay, so we will approve the applications.
Chair, after you've made the motions, you'll have to ask for the votes. So, or you can state, are there any objections or abstentions to the vote or to the motion? And then that way you don't have to do a hand roll call. You can just note that there were no objections and then it approved in that, it approved unanimously.
Do I need to do that for agenda number 2?
If you would like to go back and make it better, then yeah, maybe that would be a good idea.
So I will go back to agenda item number 2, which was the approval of the meeting minutes. And if there are no objections, we can approve the meeting minutes for April 19th, 2024. Is that correct?
Yeah. And then, sorry, you can move back to the current vote in the RACs.
So then we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is the application list. And if there are any objections, please speak up. And if no objections, the ratification list of approved applications is approved. And we can move on to item number 4. So the agenda item number 4 is adjudicatory matters. We will go into recess to discuss this. And is there anything I need to do before we go into recess?
You can just ask for testimony.
Any testimony for this agenda item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Should we note that we're going in for that specific? We're good to go to recess.
So we're gonna recess the meeting to deliberate on the adjudicatory matter listed. And yeah, we can move.
Okay, so Chair, yeah, you can just take us into recess.
Okay, so we don't need to, like,
Don't need to vote for
Anything?
this. Yeah, and we'll handle the moving on our side. So board members just
Sit tight.
yeah.
so we're gonna recess.
Exactly. Okay. Recess.
Going to accept.
You guys only make one breakout room.
We made two.
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry, we want to go to adjudicatory matters. Yeah.
First.
There's Joy.
Okay.
How do we go into it now?
Did you go ahead?
So we moved into it.
really think they are gonna be able to solve the technical difficulty and come back to the meeting.
I don't know who else is on here, and it looks like we just lost Joy.
Yeah, I haven't seen an email or anything come from Chris.
Me neither.
Wow,
I think
I-
we're in the main meeting. We're being recorded, so
I think so too. Well, we will just sit tight and wait until something else happens.
we'll wait until someone rescues us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we're
Okay,
okay. We're muted.
Okay.
are you guys able to hear us now? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we may have lost Joy.
Oh, she's there. I think we might have to move her back into,
She's there. She just has to turn on her
We have
camera.
to rename her.
yeah, I think she left the meeting and came back in.
Oh,
So
is that one?
that's probably why we have to rename her. Okay, we should be good now. Joy, if you can hear us, you could turn on your computer screen and unmute.
Okay, I'm
Ah.
unmuted. I'm
Okay.
trying to turn on my background.
It should be, we can hear you.
Okay, got it.
Whoa.
Am I on?
So shall I proceed?
Let's wait till we get
Or
Lorna
roll call?
on camera.
Um,
I mean, sorry,
Chris.
Joy on camera.
You said the sign came up. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. Can you?
Okay, let's just make sure that we can give that back to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Back to the- Participants.
Oh, my co-host.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Joy, you should be able to do that now. Okay.
Okay, thank you for everyone's patience. We will now take roll call to confirm our quorum. And members, when I call your name, please respond with present or here and indicate whether you're in the room alone or if anyone 18 years or older is present. If so, please identify them. Vice Chair Dr. Corinne DeSoto.
Present, and I am in the room alone.
Thank you. Ms. Joy Kimura.
Present, I'm in my work area alone.
Great. And I, Chairperson Dr. Kristen Coles, am also present and alone. We are back from recess and we have a decision in the matter of the naturopathic physician's license of Allison Ann Hoffman. The settlement agreement prior to filing of petition for disciplinary action and board's final order, the board has voted to accept the agreement. We will now move on to agenda item number 5. Item number 5 is to review the letter from the State of Hawaii Department of Health. So we will review the letter addressed to the board from Nathan C.Y. Tan, MD, the Deputy State Epidemiologist, Disease Outbreak Control Division, regarding the sharing of relevant findings from their investigation of adverse reactions occurring after administration of intravenous nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide oxidized, also known as NAD+ solution. Is there anyone present who wishes to provide testimony?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Okay. Members, were you all able to view the letter from the Department of Health regarding, there were two matters in the letter. One was an endotoxin found in an IV NAD solution that had been used from a pharmacy on Maui. And there was also a request at the end of the letter asking us as a board to notify all of our licensees about a product called BPC 157. So let's discuss anything that we have regarding questions or anything to note regarding that letter.
I do have a question. So just regarding the findings that there was endotoxin found in this particular batch compounded by Wailea people in Paws Pharmacy on Maui of NAD+. At this time, we don't have to, like, there's no further action on that. That has already been taken care of with the pharmacy. So the only thing that we need to decide is whether or not we are going to notify all the rest of our licensees about the fact that nobody should be compounding BPC 157. Is that correct?
I also had that sort of similar question. Most of the letter from the DOH was discussing the NAD+, but then there was no, I didn't see any specific request from DOH asking us as a board to do anything regarding that matter. And I don't know, Chris, if that's something where we need to reach back out to DOH and ask if there was anything that we needed to do, but it sounded like my understanding was that the pharmacy would be obviously notifying anyone who had purchased that product and recalling it, etc. And then the only thing I saw them requesting is for us to talk to let our licensees know about the FDA classification on BPC 157. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are working on the information that was provided, and thus far, that's the only information that's been provided. With regard to the adverse events, is that was it described? Yeah, again, if we just like say tie that to how RICO RICO complaints go, then anybody can file a complaint on a licensee. So as far as that's concerned, I'm not sure there's anything for the board to do at that point, because that would be somebody else. We can always, I mean, I don't know, maybe I can check in with the epidemiology department about whether or not there was intention for disciplinary actions or anything like that. But it seems to me like, based on the letter, it really was like you are describing, that it's more about providing the information and then requesting that the information be disseminated. So I guess the question would be to the board, like, does the board wish to disseminate this information?
I think it seems that we don't necessarily need to disseminate the information about the NAD+, because that should be coming from the pharmacy in question that had compounded the product to begin with and then sold it to the individual providers. Unless we feel that the pharmacy didn't follow through on their job appropriately with that. I would assume that they would, and that RICO was following through with them on that. And as far as I can tell in the letter, it doesn't seem like any disciplinary action would be required on behalf of the physician unless they were found to have been administering the NAD+ product past its best use and expiration date. But it doesn't look like that was the case. So seems to me that all we need to do is send out a notification that nobody should be compounding BPC 157. And I have a follow-up question on that, which is that individual naturopathic doctors are not typically the compounders. So really, I guess our job is just to notify NDs that they should not be even requesting that this product be compounded. It seems more like something that should actually be requested of the pharmacy board to follow up with the individual compounding pharmacists to make sure that nobody else is compounding that product.
You feel like the board would need to like provide any, if it's a own comment? On the information, we'll just disseminate it, like, so the question now, I guess, would be if the board wants to like provide the information for licensees. I think typically the way we do is it will put a memo on the board's webpage. And then that information is available to licensees. We don't have like a email service yet for naturopathics because it wasn't a requirement for the majority of the applicants and licensees to include their email. So it would be a total voluntary inclusion on a person's record here. So we can't like require the email. So that would be the cheapest way to get this information out. Otherwise, we'd have to mail a large number of letters. So typically we tend to post things on the webpage, and we can also reach out to the associations, even other clinics that you guys might identify as being important, so that we can provide them that information. If that's
I'd be curious. Yeah, I'd be curious to know if the medical board, the osteopathy board, the nurse practitioner board all received similar letters.
Okay.
Or being singled out as a naturopathic board. I'm just curious.
Right.
For us to notify our licensees about something that is known about the FDA that's regarding a pharmacy that's making the drug substance. I mean, seems like a little bit of a reach because that's the pharmacy board. If there's an issue that a pharmacy is making something that's not supposed to be made for doctors to be able to prescribe, is every board for every type of prescribing practitioner being notified about this? Or is this more of something that the pharmacy board should be dealing with? So I'm not sure that I feel like we should jump on notification right away. Maybe we can get more information on this, but I, totally would like to hear from Dr. DeSoto and Joy on their thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would also be curious to know if the DOH notified the other boards, because there are absolutely other providers of other license types that would potentially be administering these substances via IV. I can think of several individuals that I know who are MDs or nurse practitioners who do administer NAD+ IV. And furthermore, this letter here alludes to the fact that one of the 4 patients who experienced an adverse event was also received BPC 157 that was obtained from the same pharmacy. It seems to me that actually the issue at hand is that if there is any, I'm not sure if anybody has actually made a complaint against the provider in question, but the thing that sticks out to me that needs to be followed up on is whether or not that provider should be administering a 503A category 2 bulk drug substance that should not be compounded, and why they were able to get it compounded from the pharmacy to begin with. Like, it kind of seems like it says a little preemptive for this request to come to us, because maybe there's some more investigation that needs to happen in the background, and then we need to decide we need to follow up only if RICO determines that there is something that requires, action against the provider in question. And then otherwise, it's an issue for the pharmacy board to follow up with in terms of this pharmacy in question.
Okay.
Joy, do you have any thoughts that you feel like you want to share?
Well, I think you made some excellent points, Dr. DeSoto and Dr. Coles. As a public member, I'm not a naturopathic physician, but reading this letter does concern me. And so I go along with the concerns that you brought up. Out of curiosity, do naturopathic physicians administer NAD solutions?
Yes. So NAD plus is a fairly common, well-known IV solution that naturopathic physicians who have the ability attached to their license to provide intravenous therapy could do, but also any type of IV clinic that's run by any provider who has that ability would potentially and probably are using NAD plus.
For an NAD plus solution to be administered, I'm going to assume that it's either a naturopathic physician or a nurse practitioner or a physician that's able to do so. Would you happen to know if there are other members of the public that are able to do so without such qualifications?
You have to have the ability to prescribe because it has to be in order to get it. It's a prescription medication that's administered IV. And then for naturopaths, we have to have the parenteral therapy attached to our license to be able to administer. Nurse practitioners who, and I don't know the regulations for all the other practitioners, but anybody who has the ability to prescribe and then the ability to administer IV. So that would be, off the top of my head, naturopathic physicians, osteopathic doctors, medical doctors, nurse practitioners, and then if anybody else knows any others, I think that's all I would.
Physician assistants as well. Yeah.
Regards
Yeah.
to, I guess, our responsibility as a board, I guess I'm in favor of going with your recommendations, waiting to find some additional information if the same request was made to other boards as well.
It might also be worth just noting, Joy, for your own knowledge too, that the issue with this particular batch of NAD plus having elevated amounts of endotoxins, that could happen with pretty much any sterile compounded product. So vitamin C or vitamin B12 or even a steroid, for example, anything that would be compounded as a sterile product could become contaminated and have elevated levels of endotoxins, which can cause harm to the patient, which is why the pharmacies are really strictly regulated and required to do batch testing to make sure that their products are free of endotoxins. So as long as the pharmacy is following the appropriate protocols set forth by the FDA, then there's already, kind of checks and balances in place on trying to make sure that these products are safe for administration to the public. And then on the provider side, our requirement is basically on appropriate use of those medications and storage, right? Like we have to adhere to the expiration dates and the best use and storage guidelines set forth for each product from the pharmacy and the FDA.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
If, members, if it's found that this notice went out to other boards and it was the epidemiology department's goal is to hit this from both sides. So from the side of the the pharmacological side, and then there is also the administration of the medication side. If they were coming from both sides, is that going to be something that you guys would be willing to support as far as getting the information out?
I think that it's very sensible to make a blanket statement to all of our license holders that prescribing a product that is FDA category 2 bulk drug substance that is FDA classified not allowed to be used in compounding, even if a pharmacy is offering it, a reminder that is, we should not be doing that. I don't think there's an issue with that as a sort of blanket statement, because everyone who's prescribing these should know that if there's FDA classifications against a particular drug, then it's not technically legal for us to prescribe it in that sense. But pharmacies perhaps are offering it, and then that's the pharmacy board should be overseeing that.
Okay.
But it is up to our licensees to know what you can and cannot prescribe. So I think that's where, like, I feel fine as a reminder, reminding licensees about that.
Okay.
I have one further clarification and comment about the letter as well. It's pretty vague, actually, in the letter, what actually occurred with the BPC 157. So it just says here, one of the 4 patients who experienced an adverse event also received BPC 157. It does not specifically state that they received that BPC 157 as part of the parenteral therapy or via an IV administration. If that's the case, then that definitely is a like against the FDA allowable use for that product. However, BPC 157 exists as a supplement for oral consumption that patients can even purchase online without the need of a prescription. So, you know, it's not even clear to me from the letter that it was even being administered in a way that was not correct.
I understand what your specific question is. Okay, so I mean, I can do something with that, maybe. I could always ask for clarification on that. I can also, so I mean, from the epidemiology department, I can ask any questions on your behalf. I can also reach out to the other boards to see if they've received the notice. So, I mean, without any other conversation, I mean, the board doesn't necessarily need to make a vote or anything like that. Chair, you have the ability in your position to bring the conversation to a close if you feel that at this point you've really reviewed everything you need to.
Yeah, I think that the letter in and of itself was vague enough that I was unclear exactly what we need to do regarding it. There was a lot of information in it that then there was no real ask for us. There was nothing they requested by us regarding this entire NAD plus situation. The only request was about the BPC 157. So my recommendation would be that we wait to make any action on this until we receive further information. If that is something that we're in agreement with, I guess someone can make a motion on that. Or
not necessarily. You can just state that, you know, that's kind of like where you guys are at, and you can either, for agenda items, you can defer the item to the next meeting or a specific meeting. You can just state that the board's completed the conversation with the information, and we'll have some additional tasks to take care of that are delegated to the EO, but you don't have to make a vote or anything about moving away from this agenda item.
So, I mean, I would love to bring it up at the next meeting to hear if there's anything that comes back from any of the other boards, and I'm definitely curious about the pharmacy board as well.
Okay.
I am in agreement with that.
Any other comments on that from any of our members? So can I move on to the next agenda item?
Yep.
Yes. So we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is a discussion regarding prescription testosterone. This is a reassessment of the inclusion of testosterone into the naturopathic formulary. We have had this discussion in the past, so we are bringing this discussion back up. I would like to know if there is anyone waiting to provide testimony.
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Great. So I think Dr. DeSoto has been on the board or privy to discussions that we've had in the past regarding testosterone as a potential formulary item that we've discussed trying to get prescription rights for. And I'd like to bring this up again in response to a just inquiries we have as the naturopathic profession in terms of trying to include testosterone as a hormone prescription medication. And I think there's been some questions as to if it's something that we can, because we do have the ability to add to our own formulary, if that is something that we can add to the formulary. And this is maybe something that our Deputy Attorney General can speak on, and Dr. DeSoto, if there's anything that you wanted to note on this as well, please chime in.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Coles. So I did want to bring this back around again, and as you mentioned, it's an inquiry we've had from the general naturopathic profession and something that has been discussed as well at the HSMP, and I am a board member at the HSMP as well. So I wanted to try and get a summary of what has been discussed on this in the past and whether there was ever any official determination as to whether the board could add testosterone to the formulary or not. It's, the interpretation I get from reading the statute basically states that the board has the authority to update the formulary. And thank you for providing, Christopher, the minutes from the past meetings. When I read through those, it seemed that at one point in time, way back in whatever was this first one here, 2011. I don't know if it was that one or 2013. There was an interpretation from the DAG at that time that the original intent of the legislature was to not include controlled substances since it was removed from the version of the bill that was finally approved. However, just because it was removed from the version of that bill does not mean that the legislature means that or intends that naturopathic doctors should never have prescriptive authority of controlled substances. It just means that it was not included in that bill at that time. And so my question really to you, Chris, the current DAG, is there actually a reason why the board cannot vote to update our formulary to include testosterone? Because based on what I interpret from the current statute, it gives us that authority to do so.
Mm-hmm. Right. So my understanding is, and so I'm gonna, start real basic here, right? Is that the board, yes, so that's correct. The board does have the authority and the ability, right, to establish a formulary and, you know, update it, place items onto it. My understanding also is that the way the formulary is set up is that for naturopathic physicians to be able to prescribe something, it has to be on the formulary, right? So, you know, we've had this discussion before. You know, if it's not on the formulary, you know, NDs can't prescribe it. You know, it has to be on the formulary for you to prescribe it. The thing about controlled substances is, I think, you know, if I guess even if there is a controlled substance listed on the formulary, you know, you would still need to follow other applicable law regarding controlled substances, right? So you'd also need to have the authority to prescribe controlled substances, and that's the authorization that comes from the HRS Chapter 329, right? The Controlled Substances Act. So I'm not sure it's that we can't, you know, put controlled substances on the formulary. But I am wary of creating any confusion by doing so. And, you know, I definitely would like you to all speak to that. Because, you know, right, because the formulary is a, you know, general document, right, that applies to all licensed NDs. But then I think when we talk about the interplay with controlled substances, right? I mean, the ability to prescribe controlled substances is something that somebody individually needs to have, right? So I think there's some, you know, interaction there. But yeah, those are kind of like the general comments I had. But yeah, anybody go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You know, you're saying, okay, if the board chooses to include testosterone, which is a controlled substance, then each individual licensee, in order to prescribe those, would have to go through the appropriate channels to obtain a DEA and NED certificate to then be able to, you know, prescribe those controlled substances.
Right, individually, right?
Right. And that is like the same for every other healthcare profession. You know, if their formulary includes it, then the Narcotics Enforcement Division will see that it's included in the formulary and will then be able to issue those certificates to the individuals who are requesting those certificates. And I know that Rachel Klein, the previous HSMP president in the past, had conversations to that effect with the current head, or the head at the time, of the NED, Jared Regula, who basically said to her, if your formulary shows that you have the ability to prescribe a controlled substance, then we will issue you a certificate if you apply. So it's just like there's this circular chicken or
It's
the
very,
egg thing.
yeah, it's very
Like
circular.
we just need it on our formularies to then be able to apply for the DEA license and the NED certificate to then be able to prescribe the testosterone. And so, you know, it kind of just comes back again to here, do we have the authority to update our formulary and include testosterone in our formulary? And if we do, then that gives each individual licensee the ability to then go to the NED and further pursue the appropriate requirements to then be able to prescribe that testosterone.
So I think so I have a question that's related to that, right? If you go to your definition of the formulary that's in your chapter, you know, it reads naturopathic formulary means vitamins, minerals, dietary supplements, botanical medicines, homeopathic medicines, hormones, and those legend drugs consistent with naturopathic medical practice, right? And then of course, there's also a definition for legend drug, but, you know, I guess my question, you know, not knowing, you know, you know, is it something that fits in that definition? Because I think, because that's, kind of a starting point.
Yes,
So,
testosterone.
yes. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, testosterone as a medication is something that all naturopathic schools and universities are training
Okay.
everyone in. We've all had training in it back in school. Now, if we are in a state and we've been practicing in a state such as Hawaii, where we do not have that as a prescription medication, it may be something where if that was added to the formulary, we could, as a board, decide that anyone who is considering adding the DEA to their license to prescribe that have an updated training course on it. But it is a common medication that we are trained in prescribing.
Okay. Okay, that helps. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning that it is included in the formularies of several other states such as Oregon and Washington and Arizona and a few others probably.
Yeah, well, formulary was built upon states that already had robust formularies intact prior to us in Hawaii getting a prescription right. And all of those states that had those robust formularies, they all do include testosterone and other controlled substances, I might add. That's not a discussion that we're having. We're discussing just testosterone at this moment. But what our formulary was modeled on is formularies in other states that include that. So I think the big question, the question it just boils down to is there statute or is there verbiage anywhere that specifically prevents us from considering an addition like that?
Honestly, I don't think so. Like I said, right, the main thing is gonna be, whether it fits into the definition of naturopathic formulary. And we just did that, so I'm not trying to be repetitive. Right, because yeah, there's nothing else that prevents it. The only reason we keep, bringing up, like the DA registration is because, that's just a separate existing requirement that's out there, right? For anybody who,
Yes, I mean, for example, if a licensee attempted to prescribe testosterone to any pharmacy without a DA number, every single pharmacy would prevent that from happening.
Okay.
Because the pharmacy end is very clear on DEA numbers. You have to be registered in a system. It's very specific. So even if we had testosterone listed on the formulary, there's protection still in place in that some licensees may choose not to ever pursue a DEA number and never prescribe it, but those who do would have to pursue the DEA number. That would have to be then registered via the pharmacy, the state, whatever, all the registration, and then at that point they would be able to prescribe it.
Okay.
I would be interested to see how the statutes and if there is any kind of accompanying administrative rules function with regard to prescriptive authority for those states that already have it, like Arizona.
What do you mean, like additional training, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, just what do they have in place with regard to their application process that places the naturopath, if there are any additional privileges like we do, that places them in a position to to do those prescriptions. And so like, for example, does it explicitly state like scheduled drugs related to the practice of naturopathic medicine, or does it just literally say legend drugs like our statute does? So it would be interesting to see if they explicitly state that.
It's I can tell you I did look this up a little while ago, and I'm trying to see if I have it here easily accessible. I looked it up for Oregon and for Washington, and they sort of stated them each differently. As far as I could tell, none of them required any additional provisions to be able to prescribe those medications other than obtaining a DEA certificate and being registered with the NED. And the way they wrote it, I might have to get back to you on that because I had those tabs open for a while and I must have closed them. And they're surprisingly hard to find.
I mean, I can definitely look into these other states and compare them to our laws. Because the major issue too is like the Department of Law Enforcement, which is the new name for the Public Safety Department, has its own chapter, the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, right? So within that, there's definitions for practitioner which includes a number of license types. That definition is then used in describing registration with the Department of Law Enforcement, I think in section 33 or 32 of that chapter. And so again, it's alluding to this definition that includes all these different types of healthcare providers that have prescriptive authority for controlled substances. And so I'd be interested to know if that too is another area where if these other professions, for example, like an APRN, was required to be written into 329 to be included in that definition to then instigate, they say DEA numbers and things like that through the Department of Law Enforcement. That would be something that I think that should be figured out and found. Because I don't know actually what year APRNs were added. I'm guessing it wasn't at the same time as medical doctors. So I can do legislative history on that.
Just so I understand what you're referring to, Christopher, you're talking about that if the Department of Law Enforcement, you say the Department of Law Enforcement is basically now who is overseeing the Narcotics Enforcement Division, is that what you're saying? And that if somewhere they have a definition of practitioner that does not include naturopathic doctors, then we would have to try and get ourselves added to that definition?
I'm interested to know if that would be the case. I'm not saying you'd have to. I think that's a question. If you go on to the Hawaii State legislature's website, you can go to the heading there that says laws and research and go into Hawaii revised statutes. And if you look for the in the volumes number 6, you get 329, which is the Controlled Substances Act. And in there, there's a definition in section 1.
I think you also put that in the packet, right?
Right. It's in the packet too. I forgot. I added it.
Make it easier.
The practitioner means a physician, dentist, veterinarian, scientific investigator, or other person licensed and registered under section 32932 to distribute, dispense, or conduct research with respect to a controlled substance in the course of professional practice or research in the state. That's the definition of practitioner. Then there's a second one that says advanced practice registered nurse with prescriptive authority licensed and registered under section 32932 to prescribe, administer controlled substances in the course of professional practice in the state. And then and 3, a pharmacy, hospital, or other institution licensed, registered, or otherwise permitted to distribute, dispense, conduct research with respect to or to administer a controlled substance in the course of professional practice or research in this state. There's also practitioner delegates that are included in here, so that would be working under either a physician, dentist, veterinarian, advanced practice registered nurse with prescriptive authority, or a physician assistant. Sorry, it could be any of those. That a practitioner is delegated tasks to, so. So supervising physician is also, I think that's someone who oversees the practitioner delegate. So those are in the definitions, and then you go to that section 32 and 33. So 32932, it says every person who, and then it gives the list of 3, like manufactures, distributes, proposes to engage in the manufacture, or dispense or proposes to dispense any controlled substances, shall obtain registration issued by the Department of Public Safety in accordance with the department rules. A licensed or registered healthcare professional who acts as an authorized agent of a practitioner and who administers controlled substances at the direction of the practitioner shall not be required to obtain registration. Everyone who does do that, though, shall obtain registration issued by the Department of Law Enforcement, licensed or registered healthcare professional who acts. Okay, same information. And just by the way, that page, it can look confusing because what they've done is they've kind of doubled up the same language, but they've changed all the names of the Department of Public Safety to law enforcement. And so that's why it's double long and it's redundant. It's just they've changed the name of the department.
Thank you for providing all
And
that
then,
information.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add in 33 for registration. So it said subsection A says the Department of Public Safety shall register an applicant to manufacture, dispense, prescribe, distribute, or conduct reverse distribution with controlled substances included in sections 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22, unless it determines that the issuance of the registration would be inconsistent with the public interest. In determining the public, and it gives us list of shall consider the following factors. These would all be probably, I'm guessing, reviewed when deciding whether a DEA number will be issued, which basically be registered for controlled substances. So that would be another question of what would the Department of Law Enforcement need out of all of this from naturopaths, as opposed to other APRNs or doctors or whoever who's already in 329.
Well, right. I mean, I see when you're talking about the definition of practitioner, they state physician, dentist, veterinarian, scientific investigator, other person licensed and registered under section 32932 to distribute. So, we are considered other persons as we are licensed.
Yeah, I would say yes, right? Because the registration requirement. The registration requirement doesn't limit registration to only those named professions, right? Because it's the registration requirement statute says every person who manufactures, distributes, prescribes, dispenses, or conducts reverse distribution with any controlled substance within this state, et cetera, shall obtain a registration. So it's actually not limited to certain professions. You just have to I guess, follow the rule. I didn't look up the rules, but you know, follow the Department of now law enforcement rules for how to go about applying for the registration. So I think this is doable.
And their rules are pretty clear that if it is, included, it seems to me, let's see, we just did that one last. They shall register an applicant to manufacture, dispense, prescribe a controlled substance unless it determines that it's inconsistent with public interest. And if you go and look at what would be inconsistent with public interest, it just requires that the person does not have a suspended or revoked license, or any other of those situations that would make it so that they would not be eligible to even practice and hold a license in the first place, correct?
Right.
I mean, so when it says like C in 33,
33.
practitioners shall be registered to dispense or to prescribe any controlled substances or conduct research with controlled substances in schedules 2 through 5, which would include 3 where testosterone is, if they are authorized to dispense or to prescribe or conduct research under the law of the state.
Which then comes back to our formulary.
So when, so I guess that's the other part of it, is the process between with which there's no confusion from the naturopathic side to the pharmacy side, to the patient, right? So if a naturopath contacts a pharmacy, to request, say, we'll use testosterone as an example. That pharmacy, according to what members have said already, they would confirm whether this person is authorized to prescribe this testosterone. They would probably look at the formulary. So if they saw it on the formulary, and that would be one check mark, right? Another check mark would have to be the DEA number that it would produce, that the person would have to produce.
Right.
Is there any way that that can be fraudulently done? Like,
No. So when already to prescribe medication that is not a controlled substance, there's already multiple things. Every time you go to do a prescription, you have to provide your oral code, your NPI numbers, like things that you have to get as a prescriber. The DEA number, if you have one, you have to include it on your prescription headers. If you are filling out prescriptions, you have to write in a DEA number that has to be verified and linked to your name in a database. This state is, all states are very strict on controlled substances. Pharmacies do not allow you to even leave voicemail messages for controlled substances. You have to speak directly to a pharmacist. So in terms of like a public safety standpoint, as long as we feel our licensees are trained in the matter of how to prescribe the testosterone, the state itself has all these other buffer systems in place regarding controlled substances that I don't feel we as a board would have to worry about. I will make a note in that because naturopaths do a lot of hormone therapy, not having testosterone in our formulary creates actually quite a lot of public confusion. And as a physician who does hormone replacement therapy in the state of Hawaii, I have had patients numerous times come to me as new patients, and have been under the assumption that I can prescribe testosterone for them because I can prescribe all other hormones, and it is actually an issue with their care because I cannot prescribe testosterone, and so I actually have to then have an entire conversation as to why I can't prescribe testosterone and have to find some other provider for them to continue that therapy. For instance, there's a lot of patients who come from states that have that in their prescription authority, and they may call an office and ask, like, does your doctor do hormone therapy? And a front desk staff would say yes, because we do a lot of hormone therapy, but then they may end up in the office and be like, well, I, just moved here from Washington State. I'm on progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. It's been prescribed for many years from my naturopathic doctor in Washington. I understand you do hormones. I need to continue this prescription. It's for continuity of care, blah, blah, blah. And it's very unfortunate that I cannot provide continuity of care because testosterone is the single hormone that's not included. So that's just an example in terms of like the benefit that it would probably bring to patients in the state, just for an example.
So is it, and then I guess another question is, if you get a DEA number, is it just generally you get to, you could potentially prescribe anything under that DEA number that would be for any other practitioner in 329?
Well, I think I'll just jump in. I mean, it looks like, I don't know all the details about this, but it looks like there, there is, there is scope to, registration. There may be limitations on registration. So it's not just like you can prescribe any old thing you want.
Where do we get those restrictions?
Well,
From
like in this, well, in the 32933, the registration statute, for example, subsection B, it says registration does not entitle a registrant to manufacture, dispense, prescribe, and distribute controlled substances in Schedule 1 or 2 other than those specified in the registration. So
yeah, but those are like illicit drugs.
yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, right? I mean, like there are like boundaries in place, and
I mean, okay,
that's just one example.
right?
Yeah.
May I make a comment, please? If you're
Yeah,
trying
please.
to update the formulary, wouldn't the easiest way be to submit a bill to update the formulary for naturopathic physicians and include testosterone on it? Would that be possible?
Well, no, Joy. So the formulary is not by bill, right? The board, this board already has in its statute the authority to establish a formulary. But the establishing and the updating of the formulary is just something that the board does by itself. So where is it?
So then if the updating of the formulary is the responsibility of the board, then we could just vote to include testosterone in the formulary then, right?
Yeah, so I think, and not to speak for Dr. Close, but I think that's why we're discussing it.
That's the discussion at hand. Thank you for clarifying, Joy. So this agenda item was included to truly try to get that question answered regarding, as a board, do we have the authority to update our formulary and include testosterone as the only controlled substance? And is there anything specific anywhere that is verbiage that prevents us from adding that? And so bringing it up today was primarily to reintroduce the topic and get really clear on if that is something that we could do.
Okay, well, if it appears that the board has the authority, it appears that way from what I was listening to, all the discussion. How do you feel about including it in the formulary?
So I think that there is a large number of naturopathic physicians in the state of Hawaii that would be very supportive of testosterone being included on our formulary. We are highly trained in hormone replacement therapy, testosterone included. I do think that if we did include it, we should probably have further discussion regarding if we would like to require an updated training course on it. I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit more discussion to be had as a board, but I would be supportive of including it on our formulary if we as the board felt like that was a useful medication to have on our formulary.
Okay. So for today's discussion then, I guess we are all in agreement that we would like to include testosterone in the formulary for naturopathic physicians. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the board does have the authority to update their own formulary. So I guess for future discussions, perhaps we could, as a board, decide if there's any other requirements for, I guess, being able to prescribe testosterone among naturopathic physicians. Is that what, that's basically in line what we're discussing, right? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think you're pretty clear in understanding that that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that it may be that perhaps next meeting, this is a main agenda topic that we can make decision on if there's anything else that comes to light that would prevent us from doing that. I think that's where, we can have our EO and our DAG look at anything else and then have this be a topic of discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I can add it to the next agenda. I can reach out to the Department of Law Enforcement. Just to follow up on the association's also conversation. Just to make sure we're all on the same page about what's needed. And then I can also, it seems like you guys have already looked at the other states, but I mean, we can double check just the law language. And then, the other thing I was thinking about, looking at was, based on that actual, on other states, based on that, if there's any recommended training that they have or anything like that, or if it's just based on your education. So, I can do that. Really what I'm trying to think of is a tick list, boxes of things that if we mark those off, the board has basically covered itself when the contrary or preventing voices come out. So and if those are in the books and in the meetings, then it's on record. So we can provide our research and things like that. I mean, really, if it seems to me, and I may be wrong, Chris, but it seems like this gray area of the law really requires those justifications to basically be establishing firm, and whether that's reflective of what the profession is or not, I think it's not that. It's just the context with which it's in. And I think you had said it, Chair, or another member had said at the beginning, just the relationship between your profession and other professions and how things are handled. I think that was in the last subject on the agenda. So again, it's not about reassuring fears of others. It's more about we already have the information for that concern. We already have the information for that concern. We already have the information for that. And moving from that, and hopefully I can get something to you guys for that meeting. But yeah, so I mean, those are some of the things that I was thinking I can do in the meantime.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, I think that would be great if we could move forward, between now and the next meeting, just to clarify any of the residual questions that you brought up, specifically related to the HRS 329 from Department of Law Enforcement. And I just wanted to answer Christopher, because I think you posed a question that didn't quite get answered. If once a naturopathic doctor has a DEA number, what would prohibit us from prescribing other controlled substances that are not on our formulary? I mean, maybe it could be like you were saying, Chris, that there is a stipulation in our DEA specifically about what we're allowed to prescribe. I'm not sure about that. Maybe that would be something to find out actually from the Narcotics Enforcement Division.
Okay.
But otherwise, you know, it would actually be the sort of like a joint responsibility between the pharmacy to verify that our formulary includes those medications and the prescribing provider. You know, there is like a bit of an honor system there too. Like there are other drugs, for example, that are not controlled drugs, but are not included in our formulary. And if I tried to prescribe those, then I would be, you know, violating the terms of my license, correct? And so I would be then susceptible to investigation and, you know, disciplinary action. So some of this that, you know, it kind of applies similarly to controlled substances as well. And I imagine that if we made this change, then we would probably want to go so far as to even notify individual pharmacies or the pharmacy board, et cetera, to try and clear up any confusion, since previous to now, we haven't been able to prescribe those.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would add is, yeah, I think there are checks and balances on this, right? So Dr. DeSoto is kind of going back to what you said just now and what you said earlier, right? I mean, you know, something needs to be on the formulary for naturopathic physicians to prescribe it, right? If it's not on the formulary, you can't prescribe it, it has to be on the formulary for you to prescribe it. If you put something like testosterone on, okay, now there's this interaction that we've been talking about this whole time with the, you know, Controlled Substances Act. So, okay, so you need a DEA number for that. But then, you know, on the flip side, just because you get a DEA number to the question about, you know, prescribing everything, right? That doesn't mean you can prescribe everything. If you're a naturopathic physician, you can still only prescribe what's on the formulary, right? So there's that check to the system. So I think, yeah, you know, I think we're okay. And I think, you know, we can go forward and, you know, let's go forward based on, you know, what we've just been, you know, summarizing what we're going to do.
Great, thank you.
And I remember from the last time we were talking about the formulary, with regard to how it's made, I brought up the APRN's formulary as being the way that it's formed is it's not the medications that they can prescribe, it's the medications they can't prescribe. So it's like the exact opposite. It's the dark Brandon or whatever, you know, and so you know, I'm wondering if, I mean, obviously this formulary was established to represent what can be prescribed, and is that because of the way the law is written or the definition?
I don't remember.
No, it doesn't say anything like that. Like naturopathic formulary doesn't talk about, it just talks about what that are those drugs generally consistent with naturopathic medical practice. And then also with the authorities of the board, it also doesn't say anything along those lines either.
Well, and I think, you know, part of that is like medicine is an evolving practice, and over time there may be other drugs that need to be included that become pertinent to the practice of medicine and naturopathic medicine. So I think it was, I mean, seems fairly logical in my mind to be able to adapt and update and include things as medicine advances.
Right, and I guess what I'm wondering too, because we did include at the top of the formulary some instructional information, right? Or at least some important information. I mean,
Well,
in there
like
it does,
right?
in there, that is something that if the formulary needed to be updated we would have to remove the parenthesis and testosterone out of there, because it says excluding testosterone, right? But within the description of all the medications, can we include instruction or at least notification, for example? Like, if testosterone was included? Does it should we put a sub statement saying, DEA number required? Something like that, so that the practitioners know, the pharmacy knows, everyone knows. Yeah.
I think
and
we
I
should
think-
be as clear as we can, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And, like Dr. Coles, like you were saying earlier, right? I mean, like the pharmacies also, right? I mean, they have their, requirements, legal requirements and procedures and protocols and, so they're not just gonna, hand out testosterone to anybody, right?
Okay.
So there's that too. There's that check too. But yeah, and if we're gonna proceed with this and, say add testosterone, if there are any other updates to the formulary, I mean, it's not just testosterone, but if there are any other updates to the formulary, let's do that too.
And having this inclusory formulary is really like, it's hard for the same kind of the similar reasons that you brought up, Dr. DeSoto, about drug names. Like you could have a generic on there, but then say there's a semi-modified medication that adds like a vitamin supplement onto the medication or something. All of a sudden now, is that need to be included? That's the part of the issue with an inclusory formulary. You kind of get a long list if your prescribing powers are large. So
Yeah, I would love to actually, can I just make one comment about that? Because I've had conversations with this in the past with Dr. Michael Traub, who was on the board at the time that this formulary was made, and it was like their discussion, I guess, with him, maybe him and Dr. Kearns was also on the board, and they, like had a reason why they made an inclusionary formulary. And I have spoken to him, and he has since kind of changed his mind and said, maybe it would be good for us to have an exclusionary formulary. So it might be worthwhile when we, address this in our next board meeting, that we address not only adding testosterone to our formulary, but potentially discuss changing from an inclusionary to an exclusionary formulary. And maybe we even invite him to provide testimony at the time to just give us some more context as to why it was written that way to begin with. And then we can discuss the merits of whether or not we should actually switch it. Because I think, to your point, is this is going to become like a never-ending task as more and more drugs and more drug categories are created.
I mean, the good news is that we don't list our drugs by name.
Right, for the most part. We go by type, right?
I mean, if that was happening, that would be
right.
wild.
Okay. So sorry, just to be clear, you're stating that there's a difference between drug type and drug names, right? As far as a formulary construction is concerned.
Right, like we have categories. We are not listing every medication by name.
Okay. Okay. We are at 4:07, which is 7 minutes over our meeting time. There is just the kind of meeting matters at the end. Chair, do you believe that the board's done with the conversation for now and ready for the plan to move to the next meeting?
I do, unless there's any other comments regarding agenda item number 6. I think we should move on and use our discussion about agenda 6 to help inform us for discussion at the next meeting. So agenda number 7 is our next meeting date, and the board will need to adjust its meeting for February 7th, 2025 due to schedule conflicts. The board will update its meeting schedule webpage as soon as a date is determined. For updates, please go to the cca.hawaii.gov/pvl/boards/naturopathy. For our members, I assume you will be updating us via an email.
Yeah.
Do I need any type of motion to close the meeting?
No.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year to everyone, and we will meet again in 2025. And we are adjourning at 4:08 p.m.
Thank you, Dr. Coles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Fabulous
you.
job.
Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Cute.
Kill the
Bye.
recording.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
End.